Life has been throwing curveballs at me lately, and I feel the need to vent before I completely lose my mind. My wedding is set for April, a day my fiancé and I have been dreaming about for over a year. He's 25 and has always envisioned a spring wedding, with blooming flowers and perfect weather, a fresh start, a new chapter in our lives. I was so excited about it, or at least I was until last week. To give you some background, I'm 27 and have an older sister who is 30. We've always been quite different. She's the quintessential golden child, the one who can do no wrong in our parents' eyes. It was never explicitly stated, but it was clear she was their favorite. If she got into trouble, it was always, she's just figuring things out. But if I messed up? It was like the world was ending. That dynamic never really changed as we grew older. When it came time for college, my parents' favoritism became glaringly obvious. They took out a second mortgage on their house to pay for my sister's tuition, which was a huge deal. They struggled with those payments for years, and by the time I was ready for college, there was nothing left for me. I had to navigate scholarships and part-time jobs all on my own. Don't get me wrong, I'm proud of how I managed, but there's been a simmering resentment beneath the surface. Fast forward to now, and I've landed a decent job that pays well enough for me to help my parents financially. They're still paying off that second mortgage, so for the past couple of years, I've been sending them $650 a month to ease their burden. It wasn't something they asked for, I just felt it was the right thing to do. But despite my efforts, it feels like I'm still invisible. My sister remains the star of the show, even though she hasn't accomplished much since college. Let's talk about her for a moment. She's been in a relationship for about 3 years, and from what I gather, it's not going well. He's been dropping hints, more like neon signs, that he wants her to propose, but she's been dragging her feet. Honestly, I don't think she's ready for marriage, but that's not my place to say. I've stayed out of it because who wants to get involved in someone else's relationship drama? That was until last Saturday when I received a call from my mom. It was around lunchtime, and I was at home with my fiancé, going over some final details for the wedding, table arrangements, flower choices, the usual. My mom called and said, "Hey, can you come over? We need to talk." Her tone was serious, like something significant was happening. Naturally, I asked what it was about, but she only said, "You'll understand when you get here." I was a bit annoyed. We were in the middle of wedding planning, and I despise when people do the whole "we need to talk" thing without giving details. It's like they want you to stress about it on the way there. My fiancé could tell I was irritated and suggested we ignore it and keep working on the wedding. I considered it, but I had to find out what was so serious that it couldn't be said over the phone. I told him I'd head over and try to make it quick. How bad could it be? He rolled his eyes but didn't argue. Looking back, I probably should have stayed home. When I arrived at my parents' house, it felt like walking into an intervention. My sister was sitting on the couch with a smug look, and my parents were perched across from her, as if they had rehearsed some grand speech. The atmosphere was way too formal for a casual family chat, and I immediately felt on edge. I sat down, and my mom launched into her pitch about how family is essential and how big moments are best shared with loved ones. Then she dropped the bomb. My sister had this brilliant idea to propose to her boyfriend during my wedding reception. She actually said it would be romantic and the perfect time since all the family would be there. My sister was grinning like this was the most genius plan ever. I didn't even let her finish. I cut her off with a flat, "Absolutely not. Who thinks like this? It's my wedding, the day my fiancé and I have been planning for over a year. How could it be okay to hijack that for her relationship drama?" I expected some pushback, but I didn't anticipate the way they doubled down. My dad jumped in with his classic "family should support each other's" speech, acting like I was being unreasonable for saying no. Then my sister chimed in, calling me selfish and accusing me of ruining her big moment. Her big moment? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked her point blank why, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. "They've already shown you who they are," he said. "What makes you think they'll back down now?" He wasn't wrong. The next day, I received a call from my mom. She wanted to talk things through, but it was clear she just wanted me to change my mind. She kept saying things like, "It's just one moment, and it won't take away from the wedding." I told her for the millionth time that my answer was no. She tried guilt-tripping me, saying my sister was heartbroken and that I was tearing the family apart over something small. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked her, if this is so small, then why can't she just propose on a different day? She didn't have an answer for that. Later that evening, my sister showed up at my house unannounced. She didn't even bother to text or call first, she just started pounding on my door. When I opened it, she immediately launched into a rant about how I'd ruined her plans and humiliated her in front of our parents. She was shouting so loudly that I was sure the neighbors could hear. She kept going on about how her boyfriend was getting impatient and how this was her last chance to propose before he left her. I told her straight up, that's your problem, not mine. If he's going to leave you over this, maybe your relationship has bigger issues than you think. That shut her up for a moment, but then she started yelling again, calling me selfish and jealous, claiming I didn't want her to be happy. At that point, I told her to leave before I called someone to make her go. After she stormed off, I thought maybe things would calm down. Nope. The very next day, I got a call from my grandmother. She's the only grandparent we have left and has always been the family's peacekeeper. She started off by saying she'd heard about the situation and wanted to help mediate. Of course, that just meant my sister had gone crying to her with her side of the story. Grandma said she was disappointed in how I was handling things and that family should stick together, especially during big moments like weddings. I could tell right away that my sister had twisted the story to make herself look like the victim. So, I calmly explained everything to her, how my sister wanted to propose at my wedding, how my parents were fully backing her, and how I had told them no. You'd think that would have been enough, right? Hell no. She started saying things like, it's just a proposal, and it won't take away from your wedding if it's done tastefully. I told her, Grandma, it's my wedding, not hers. Why is this so hard for everyone to understand? She tried to push the family comes first angle, but I wasn't having it. I said, if family comes first, then why isn't anyone respecting me and my fiancé on our day? The conversation got heated after that. She kept defending my sister, saying she was in a tough spot and just wanted to make her proposal special. I reminded her that my sister is 30 years old and fully capable of planning her own proposal without hijacking someone else's event. Things escalated, and before I knew it, Grandma was crying, saying I was being cruel to my family. I felt bad for making her upset, but at the same time, I wasn't going to back down. I told her, if supporting family means letting people walk all over me, then maybe I don't need that kind of support. After I hung up, I was completely drained. This whole situation was turning into way more drama than I ever expected. My fiancé, as usual, was my rock. He was fired up, saying this was beyond disrespectful and that they were completely out of line. I agreed and said we needed to stand firm on our boundaries. He wasn't happy with how things had escalated, but he knew we couldn't let this slide. The next few days were oddly quiet, no calls, no texts, nothing. It felt like the calm before the storm. I started wondering if maybe they had finally gotten the message, but deep down, I knew it wasn't over. My family isn't exactly known for letting things go. Sure enough, my mom called again a few days later. This time, she tried a different tactic. Instead of guilt-tripping me, she appealed to my sense of fairness. She said, we've talked to your sister, and she's willing to compromise. She won't do it during the ceremony, just at the reception. Isn't that reasonable? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told her, no, it's not reasonable. The answer is still no. End of discussion. She sighed and said, I don't focused on us. She said she decided to wait and propose at a different time. Her tone didn't sound genuine, but at least she was saying the right words. I told her, if you're serious about this, then I'm willing to move past it. But if you even think about pulling something at the wedding, I'm not afraid to kick you out. She told me to calm down and affirmed that her boyfriend was already going cold on her, and that she was starting to doubt the whole idea of committing to him. For the first time, she went back to joking with me like a sister, promising not to ruin anything. After that call, I shared what happened with my fiancé. He was cautiously optimistic but made it clear he still didn't trust her. I'll believe it when I see it, he said. Honestly, I felt the same way, but at least it seemed like the drama might finally be settling down. With that out of the way, we threw ourselves into wedding prep. The big day was only a couple of weeks away, and there was still so much to do. We finalized the menu, went over the timeline with our wedding planner, and confirmed all the vendors. It felt good to focus on the exciting parts again instead of constantly dealing with family drama. But, of course, it wasn't long before things took another turn. A few days after the call with my sister, my dad texted me. He said he wanted to make sure everything was okay and asked if we could meet up to talk. I agreed, thinking maybe he just wanted to smooth things over before the wedding. When we met, he seemed off, circling around the topic of my sister without actually saying much. Eventually, he admitted he was worried my sister might still try something at the wedding. I wasn't surprised. I told him, if she does, she's getting kicked out. Period. My dad started talking about how things can get emotional at weddings and how I should try to be understanding if my sister got caught up in the moment. I stopped him right there. If you're telling me to let her get away with something, then we have a problem. I'm not letting anyone ruin this day for me or my fiancé. He backed off after that, but the whole conversation left a bad taste in my mouth. It felt like he was trying to test how far I'd let things go. When I got home, I told my fiancé about the conversation, and he was furious. This is exactly why I don't trust them. They're still trying to cover for her. At this point, we decided to come up with a backup plan. We talked to our wedding planner and asked her to brief the staff at the venue. We didn't go into all the messy details, but we made it clear that if anyone tried to hijack the event, they were to be escorted out immediately. It felt a little extreme, but honestly, I didn't want to take any chances. Now, our wedding is just 2 days away, and the mood is a strange mix of excitement and underlying anxiety. My fiancé and I are trying to stay focused on the final touches, double-checking RSVPs, finalizing the seating chart, and making sure everything is good to go. But there's this persistent worry sitting in the back of my mind. What if my sister hasn't actually backed down? What if my parents are still quietly encouraging her? I'm trying to brush it off and stay positive, but it's hard not to think about it. Tomorrow is the rehearsal dinner, and while I'm hopeful everyone will behave, there's still that nagging doubt. My sister hasn't said or done anything suspicious lately, and my parents have been quiet since that last conversation. On the surface, it feels like things are fine, but with my family, you never really know. I keep telling myself, just 2 more days. If I can get through this, everything will be fine. We're doing everything we can to make sure the day goes smoothly. The wedding planner is prepped, the venue staff knows what to watch out for, and we've made it clear that no nonsense will be tolerated. My fiancé is fully ready to throw people out if needed, and honestly, so am I. I'm holding on to cautious optimism, but if this whole situation has taught me anything, it's that with my family, nothing is ever as straightforward as it seems. Fingers crossed that this truce is legit and not just another setup for more drama. I'll let you guys know how it went after the big day. Update 3, hey, everyone, it's time for the update. I know you've been waiting. The wedding day has come and gone, and let me tell you, unfortunately, it was every bit as chaotic as I feared. We got through it, but not without some drama. The day started off perfectly. The weather was gorgeous, my fiancé looked stunning, and everything had messages for a couple of days. I finally decided to respond. I felt like I had to address the chaos head-on, even if it was exhausting. I sent a group message to my parents and sister, laying out my feelings clearly. I told them that I was hurt and disappointed by their actions, especially my sister's stunt at the wedding. I reminded them that it was my special day, and I had every right to protect it. My mom responded almost immediately, saying she was just trying to keep the peace and that I was being unreasonable. She insisted that my sister didn't mean any harm and that I should have been more understanding. I felt my blood boil. How could she not see how disrespectful it was? I told her that I didn't want to hear any more excuses and that I needed some space to process everything. My dad chimed in next, trying to mediate again. He said that family is important and that we should all just move on. I shot back that moving on doesn't mean ignoring the problem. I told him that I felt like I was the only one who cared about boundaries and respect. It was frustrating to see them all rally around my sister, who had clearly crossed a line. Then my sister sent a message that made my heart sink. She claimed that I was the one who had ruined everything and that I had embarrassed her in front of the family. She said she was heartbroken and that I had betrayed her. I couldn't believe it. I told her that she needed to take responsibility for her actions instead of playing the victim. I reminded her that she had made a choice to propose at my wedding, and that was entirely on her. The family group chat exploded after that. My aunt, who had been quiet until now, jumped in with her 2 cents, saying that I should have just let it go for the sake of family harmony. I felt like I was in a twisted version of a family therapy session, where everyone was more concerned about keeping the peace than addressing the real issues. I told them all that I was done with the passive-aggressive comments and that I needed time to think about how I wanted to move forward. After that, I took a step back from the family drama. My husband and I focused on each other, enjoying our new life together. We went on a short honeymoon, which was a much-needed escape from the chaos. It felt good to be away from the constant barrage of messages and opinions. When we returned, I was still grappling with how to handle my family. I knew I needed to set boundaries, but I also didn't want to cut them out completely. I decided to take a break from the family group chat and limit my interactions with them for a while. I needed to prioritize my mental health and my marriage. 3 weeks after the wedding, I finally felt ready to reach out again. I sent a message to my parents, asking if we could meet up to talk. I wanted to clear the air, but I also wanted to make it clear that things needed to change. I told them that I loved them, but I couldn't continue to be part of a family dynamic that felt so toxic. When we met, it was tense. My mom was defensive, and my dad seemed caught in the middle. I laid out my feelings, explaining how their actions had hurt me and how I felt like my boundaries had been disrespected. I told them that I needed them to understand that my wedding was a significant moment for me and that I wouldn't tolerate any more attempts to undermine it. To my surprise, my dad actually listened. He admitted that he hadn't fully grasped how much the situation had affected me. My mom, on the other hand, was still stuck in her mindset of wanting to keep the peace at all costs. I told her that peace doesn't come from ignoring problems, it comes from addressing them head-on. After that conversation, things felt a little lighter. I knew it wouldn't be an overnight fix, but at least we were starting to communicate. I also reached out to my sister, letting her know that I was willing to talk when she was ready to take responsibility for her actions. It's been a long road, but I'm hopeful that we can rebuild our family dynamics in a healthier way. I've learned that setting boundaries is essential, and I'm committed to standing firm in my decisions. I appreciate everyone who has supported me through this journey, and I'll keep you updated on how things progress. Thank you for sticking with me through all of this. Take care. Calls for a bit longer, I finally decided to answer my mom. The moment I picked up, she started crying, saying things like, "How could you treat your sister like that? She's devastated and broken. Don't you care about this family?" I stayed calm and told her that my sister brought this on herself and that I had warned her a million times. She didn't want to hear it. She kept insisting that I should have just let it go because it was just a proposal and wouldn't have hurt anything. I told her, "Mom, she disrespected me and my husband on the most important day of our lives. If you think I'm the bad guy for standing up for myself, then that's your problem, not mine." That didn't go over well. She started yelling about how I was tearing the family apart, and I just hung up. I wasn't in the mood to argue anymore. Then my dad decided to show up at our house unannounced. My husband and I were just starting to feel like things were calming down when I heard a knock at the door. It was him, standing there with a stern look on his face. He said he wanted to talk things out, but it quickly turned into another lecture about how I should have handled things differently. He kept saying, "You didn't have to escalate it like that, and family is supposed to give each other grace." I told him, "Dad, I didn't escalate anything. I told her not to do it, and she did it anyway. What was I supposed to do, let her walk all over me?" He didn't have an answer for that, but he still tried to guilt-trip me. At one point, he even said, "You know your sister doesn't have anyone else. You're her role model." That one made me laugh because honestly, if I'm her role model, she's doing a terrible job of following my example. The real chaos, though, happened a couple of days later. My husband and I decided to grab dinner at a local restaurant, thinking we'd finally get a break from all the drama. But guess who showed up? My sister. I have no idea how she knew we'd be there, but she came storming in like a woman on a mission. She walked straight up to our table and started yelling about how I ruined her life. People in the restaurant were staring, and my husband looked like he was ready to throw his drink at her. I told her, "You need to leave before you embarrass yourself even more." That just made her angrier. She started ranting about how her boyfriend dumped her and how it was all my fault. She said, "You made me look like a fool in front of everyone. You destroyed my relationship." I told her, "You did that to yourself. Maybe if you respected other people's boundaries, you wouldn't be in this mess." At this point, a manager came over and asked her to leave. My sister refused, saying she had a right to confront me. The manager threatened to call the cops, and that's when things got physical. My sister tried to shove past the manager to get to me, but a couple of people nearby stepped in and restrained her. It was a whole scene. People were yelling, my husband was furious, and my sister was dragged out of the restaurant kicking and screaming. After that, my husband and I decided to leave too. We didn't even finish our food. On the way home, he said, "I think it's time to cut ties," and honestly, I agreed. This whole situation has shown me just how toxic my family can be, and I don't think I can keep putting myself or my husband through this. Since then, I've gone no contact with my sister and low contact with my parents. As for my sister, I heard through the grapevine that she's been telling everyone who will listen that I'm the reason her life is falling apart. She's blaming me for her breakup, her embarrassment, and everything else that's gone wrong for her. It's frustrating, but at this point, I'm done caring. I've spent too much time and energy dealing with her nonsense, and I'm ready to move on. My husband and I are focusing on building our life together and leaving the drama behind. It's not easy, but it feels like the right decision. I've learned that sometimes you have to put yourself and your happiness first, even if it means walking away from people who refuse to respect you. That's it for now. Thanks for sticking with me through all of this. Your advice and support have meant a lot and have helped me see things more clearly. Here's to hoping for a drama-free future.